Hey guys, Mustached here to review The Last of Us Episode 6, The Price. This is the flashback episode with Joel and Ellie. So, for those unfamiliar with the game, if I remember this correctly, what they did with the flashbacks is they would disperse them throughout the game story. I think that's how they did it in the game, if I remember that correctly. I could be wrong, or maybe it was all tied together or lumped together like this flash series of flashbacks are lumped together. So of course we have all the ones from the video game, as I predicted that they would be, because of course they were going to do these. I predicted as much. And to anyone who criticized, oh, Joel wasn't going to be a part of this anymore because he died in episode 2, it's like, again, I think, even the people who, it feels even more baffling to anyone who played the video game. I mean, again, granted that game has criticisms you can definitely levy stronger to it than the series, but I digress. Point being is that if you knew that they were going to adapt the flashbacks, then why wouldn't you expect the flashbacks to turn up? And here they all are. From Joel taking Ellie to the little dinosaur museum, to the spaceship shuttle, and having her sit in and have that little, cool shot where it's like, it distorts the reality and she's pretending she's going into space, and then her seeing the firefly sign and that beginning to cause the separation. We see her, how she gets her tattoo and one of her former relationships, and beginning to dive into that and to do all of the teenage things, as Joel puts it, smoking and all that, and getting tattoos as well. We also get to figure out, because I've heard the criticisms of before, who's Eugene? Who's Eugene? Who's Eugene? Well, how about this? They tied the entire loop of who Eugene is in this one episode. They did that too. They added a whole new character in, they looped it back around, so now everyone's criticism of who's Eugene has been invalidated. We now know who Eugene was, how he was killed, and all of this. And how Joel lied about the circumstances of trying to comfort the psychiatrist woman. I don't remember her name off the top of my head right now, but point being is that came full circle, and Ellie was present. That's why she knew about this situation, and that's actually what further drove them apart, leading up to the revelation of what happens after the party, because that's our final flashback, but now we're seeing it from Joel's point of view. In that, we see it doesn't cut away when Ellie walks away in the snow. She actually returns and has her true final moments with Joel here. In that, she wants to finally know the truth, and Joel, as he did in the video game, at the end of the video game, because that's when the flashbacks, actually, this particular flashback happens, reveals all of the truths about that day, about how there were no raiders there, it was him, she put that together, how there was no something else, or rather, and how he also did in Marlene himself, which was alluded to. I suppose the only one that frustrates me, and again, willing to criticize, is still the cure, because I get that criticism independent of everything else, and because that was so present in the video game, that ambiguity, that there was no guarantee. That was something that was said in the video game, if I remember correctly, the lore all behind that. So, but Joel does directly say, yes, you were the cure. Now, maybe I'm misremembering when this comes up in season 1 about, like, if it really would be a guarantee. I don't remember, like, the exact dialogue at this juncture and point. I might have to relook at season 1. But I do feel like this does narrow the gap as it did in the video game of, like, who was quote-unquote justified or wronged or whatever. Because here's the thing, in the video game, right, you had someone who was unconscious, and that's one of the biggest parts in conjunction with, again, there is no guarantee that the cure would work. These two things are crucial bits of information that I feel like need to have stayed in the series in order to create this question about what it means to do these things, you know, despite, you know, that larger gap. You know, what that person means to you, that answer means so much more when you have that level of, you know, what Joel was willing to do because he understood that there was a gamble and that Ellie was unconscious. These two factors together, on top of the one where Joel obviously sees her as a daughter, it's now a trifecta of elements that makes Joel such a compelling character. And I feel like when it's just a yes or no, or a yes in this case, it does almost feel like it's removing a pillar or two from that equation. And I don't think that's the right way to go about doing this. So that is my legitimate criticism of the show. But I'm sure the people who have been criticizing every episode of the show, Critical Drinker, I've been watching, I don't remember her name, it begins with an A. She has like this fox icon thing to represent her. I've been watching at least her reviews, and I know that I already knew that the Critical Drinker was going to bash on the show regardless because he's a grifter. I already knew that, but I'm here to review the series as objectively as possible. That is why I'm still criticizing what I'm criticizing, but I'm praising what deserves to be praised. That is something that seems to be incapable of something of the Critical Drinker, at least. That's why I stopped watching his videos. I don't want to support a channel that will unbalancedly review something. That seems cheap. That seems like you don't deserve my sub or my views or my time. You need to earn those things by actually reviewing something truly objectively. Take all of this politic bullshit that you're clearly trying to insert into the show, like, way past any recognition of what it needs to be, and being like, oh, but they're the ones doing it. It's like, yeah, but countering it, let's assume in good faith that were true. A reviewer should still put their own politics aside and review something as objectively as possible. That's what makes a good reviewer, and someone like a Critical Drinker a shitty reviewer. And I would say the same thing goes for the Fox individual that I was talking about, the one that begins with an A, but I don't remember her name. She has at least she has a kinetic energy about her, despite, you know, consistently lashing out about the faces that the actress makes, and it's like, okay, that's a pretty lame criticism. It's not really addressing much of anything. And it's like, once in a blue moon she'll bring up a good point, and it's like, okay, so you're like the bare minimum of like what I would expect from a good reviewer. Or a mediocre reviewer is close to where I would put her. You see, a good reviewer is able to step outside of these weird things. And it's just like, just review the show. You don't have to, like, pick apart things that seem so obtuse and, like, go on weird, bizarre tangents, by the way, but hey, if that's her grift, then whatever, fine. It's at least, again, I will admit that it's at least a little bit more entertaining than The Critical Drinker. His videos are just flat out boring. His persona, if you will, is just boring. So yeah, that's just that. And I get it, right? And I'll flip the script. I get that as being part of a YouTuber, you want to be entertaining. I get that. And here's the thing. I think you can achieve both of those things without needing to pull out from something so outside of what the show is trying to do, aka certain politics in this regard, and like bringing them in. I don't think you need that to, well, I mean, I guess someone like The Critical Drinker now depends on it, because without that, his sub count would probably go down. But I digress. This episode, for the most part, was good. Again, answering the questions about who Eugene was, having the flashbacks so closely mirror the original, but, again, criticizing the show where it needs to be criticized. I just think Joel simply answering yes without any sort of clarification is bad. I think he should have spoke up at that point and said there was a chance. That's what he should have said. There was a chance it could have been a cure. And here's the thing. I still would have bought Ellie's answer as I did in the video game. Because she would have thought, well, that chance would have still been worth it from her perspective. That's the part we buy. But just having a yes or no answer, and again, in this case, the yes answer, without any sort of clarification, it still feels like it's ruining a complete pillar of the sort of implication of what Joel was doing. It seems like the show is trying to suggest that this was a guarantee, or at least maybe even Joel thought it was a guarantee. Even though, again, I don't remember if in Season 1 if he was told that or not. But yeah, I think I'm not too surprised by this, anyway. But again, I'm still willing to criticize it because, again, I want to show what actual criticism looks like. When you actually look at what a media piece should be doing to achieve better outcomes, right? Again, you're achieving more when Joel's answer would be, there's a chance. Again, it just adds layers. It removes layers when you box things in this black and white, which is what feels like it's happening a lot closer here in this version of the episode, of the revelations that Ellie is receiving at the tail end of the episode. Outside of, when the flashback ends, and it ends with her returning to the theater. So I assume that the next episode is probably gonna be where Abby might come back into the picture, ? And maybe certain other fates will be determined and killed, ? I think that's what happens next, and I think they're on day 2 / moving into day 3 of Seattle, so I think that's where that happens in the story's context. So yeah, that's where we're going. So again, we'll see how that is performed when we get there. So again, for the most part, I think this episode is mostly strong, which is still good. Like, I'm not saying this episode is bad because of one small criticism. Again, I think that is an unfair thing to do, right? I think that in a large part, I've seen certain other reviewers definitely do that before, where they will take one bit of information, and in this case, I won't even deny that it's not like this is small, it's actually pretty big, so again, that's why I'm putting forth the criticism. But to put that in conjuncture and say, but that now ruins the rest of the episode, I think that's still unfair. I think taking things bit by bit and scene by scene is much more preferable to tighten up these smaller, in conjunction with, what's present here. That scene itself could have been stronger, is what I'm trying to suggest, simply. But again, that doesn't ruin the previous scenes in the episode. That's all I'm trying to say. Anyway, I think this episode, again, just overall, pretty strong, but has some issues, definitely toward the end, with how they handled the reveal. Anyway, that's my full review of episode 6. If you ended up enjoying that, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition about small YouTubers. Second, to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And third, to my Discord server. You can join, collab, chill, do all that cool stuff for free. And until next time, everyone, bye!